keep trickling in while I get us rolling. So, hello, folks. My name is Alyssa. My pronouns are she, they, and I'm going to be your host this evening. So, welcome. We are recording the webinar, so people who aren't able to make it tonight are able to watch it later. So, if you prefer not to have your face in the video, you can just keep your camera off, and that's totally fine. So, welcome to this learning circle. It's hosted by Climate Justice Durham. We're a multi-generational group of folks. We're advocating for effective, equitable climate action to address the climate crisis. We look at fighting for better government policy at all levels, improving community awareness and understanding of climate change, and urging governments to build community capacity and resilience. So we're aiming to reduce the severity of the crisis, ensure we're ready for its impacts, and create a healthier, more sustainable future for all people. So we began in 2019 as Fridays for Future WIPY, and in 2021 we realized we'd been doing lots of work beyond WIPY in other Durham municipalities. So we became Climate Justice Durham. And since then, we've organized and participated in many events, including community cleanups, fundraisers, local candidates debates, awareness and education events, and delegations to legislative bodies. And in 2025, we launched our Learning Circle webinars, which are designed to help folks learn and connect with the smart and really caring people who are doing this work on climate justice. So we are so glad that you are able to join us for our fourth Learning Circle. And after a summer of extreme heat with 6 heat waves experienced in the GTA area, by late August, tonight's topic is particularly relevant. So our goal is to present practical, factual information and educate people and equip them and our people in our community for action. So we hope something you hear about tonight is going to leave you inspired, empowered to act and to help build community and protect this corner of the planet. So if this is your first time participating in a CJD event, please let us know in the chat how you heard about it if you are so inclined. We love when new folks can join us. We would like to start off with a land acknowledgement. So Climate Justice Durham is active on the lands of the Miccosukee and Anishinaabe, who have inhabited it for thousands of years prior to European colonization. These lands are the traditional and treaty territory of the Williams Treaties First Nations, which include Curve Lake First Nation, Hiawatha First Nation, Alderville First Nation, the Chippewas of Beausoleil First Nation, the Chippewas of Georgina Island First Nation, the Chippewas of Brahma First Nation, and the Mississaugas of Scugog Island First Nation. We honor and respect these nations as rights holders, and we are grateful for their ongoing stewardship of these lands and waters. We also thank them for their willingness to share their knowledge to help us repair and rebuild our relationships with them and with this land. So some ground rules. Please be respectful and considerate of others. And if you have questions, you can put them in the chat or like questions that others have asked. Trevor, give a little wave. Trevor is going to be our taking note. He's going to be our event manager, and he will be taking note of the questions as they come in and queuing them up for response after our little presentation. And we also have Suzanne, who is going to keep us on time. And we have the lovely Julia, who is manning the slides and is waving at us. So waving back at you, Julia. So we are going to, without further ado, start introducing our speaker. And tonight, perfect timing, Zee. Zee is in an office where the lights go off automatically, so she periodically has to turn them on. But tonight, the CJD welcomes Zee Bhanji to speak with us about her work over the past 19 years leading the Low Income Energy Network in her role as a stakeholder engagement and energy policy analyst. Zee has been instrumental in the development of an energy affordability strategy in Ontario. She has a master's degree in international development studies and worked in the development sector in Kenya in a previous life. The Low Income Energy Network, if you haven't heard of it before, is a joint program of the Advocacy Centre for Tenants Ontario, ACTO, and the Canadian Environmental Law Association, CELA. And LIEN is funded by Legal Aid Ontario. It advocates for affordable and sustainable energy solutions for low-income households, working to ensure that energy policies advance both climate goals and social equity. So welcome, Zee, and you can take it away.
Thank you. Thanks so much. And thank you for doing that introduction. I feel like I don't even really have to introduce myself anymore. Um, I just want to thank everyone for joining us here this evening. I'm going to be talking about who LIEN is, what we do, and what we and our partners have done to push for policy changes and public action to protect people from the dangers of extreme heat. Let's go to slide 2. So, as Alyssa said, LIEN is a joint program of CELA and ACTO. We sit right at the intersection of housing and the environment. We've become widely recognized as a primary go-to organization with expertise on low-income energy issues. We were formed in 2004, and we're a network of community legal clinics, anti-poverty groups, affordable housing groups, environmental and social justice groups. Anyone can become a member of LIEN. It is free of charge. You just have to endorse our mandate. You can sign up on our website. And you can also become part of our advisory committee if you really want to become involved, and that would help you inform our strategic direction going forward. Next slide, please. So 20 years ago, LIEN developed a vision for a comprehensive strategy for reducing energy consumption and costs for Ontario's vulnerable low-income households. And through our persistent advocacy work with the Ontario government and the Ontario Energy Board, we've been instrumental in bringing this vision to reality. Over the years, we really have had tremendous amount of program influence on the government, and we've succeeded in heightening the awareness and the need for energy assistance and efficiency programs in the low-income sector. We've done this by meeting regularly with key decision makers at the Ministry of Energy, the Ontario Energy Board, the Independent Electricity Systems Operator. And so just over the years, we've really tried to keep the issue of low-income consumer protection on the public agenda. Next slide, please. So as you can see from the pyramid that I showed you previously, we now have programs that can help low-income customers reduce their energy use through the introduction of free energy efficiency upgrades to their homes. So for electric utilities, we've got the energy affordability program, and for gas customers, we've got the home winterproofing program. We also have customer service rules that utility companies will offer, such as security deposit exemptions, waiving disconnection and reconnection fees, and establishing an arrears repayment agreement that's pretty generous. So we've also advocated for that. And now we also have the OESP, which is the Ontario Electricity Support Program. It's a proactive, ongoing rate affordability program that provides low-income electricity customers with a monthly on-bill credit. And that is something that LIEN really advocated for more than 10 years ago. And lastly, we have an emergency financial assistance fund for low-income customers that are in arrears or facing disconnection, and that is called the LEAP program or the LEAP EFA grant. Yeah, we can talk about these programs later on. I'm curious to know how many people know about these programs and how many people have applied for them in the past. Slide 5, please. So Canada's National Adaptation Strategy identifies extreme heat as the deadliest weather-related event in Canada and has set a goal of 2040 to eliminate all heat-related deaths. But we really do need urgent policy change now to meet that goal. and a heck of a lot sooner than 2014. And why is that? Well, climate change is an environmental, public health, and equity crisis. And climate change will continue to increase the frequency, extent, and duration of extreme heat events. As most of you probably know, various life-threatening conditions can occur when the body cannot maintain its core temperature of approximately 36.6 degrees due to excessive heat, excessive external heat. So we're looking at things like heat exhaustion, heat stroke, cramps, dehydration, cardiac arrest, and or stress, respiratory issues, and premature death. Extreme heat is a particular risk to seniors, children and infants, individuals with chronic illnesses and people taking certain medications, and people with mobility challenges. And also to tenants who often cannot control the temperature in their homes. It's a really unfair situation. Tenants and regular people aren't responsible for climate change. They're also not the ones getting the profits and benefits from the continued burning of things like fossil fuels, but yet they're bearing the disproportionate burden of the outcomes of climate change and the associated health risks. Next slide, please. When at least 619 people died in British Columbia because of an extreme heat event in 2021, 98% of those people died indoors. 90% of those people were over the age of 60. And more than 60% of the people who died had seen a medical professional within a month prior to their death. The report also noted that deaths were higher among people living in socially and materially deprived neighborhoods with poor quality housing. Quebec experienced similar heat deaths back in 2018, and they also wrote a report. Findings in both the Quebec and the BC report were similar and stressed the disproportionate impact of heat on the most vulnerable. In January 2022, 650 municipalities across Canada declared a climate emergency. The report of the BC coroner after that awful event was dedicated to the families, friends, and communities who lost their lives from the impact of extreme heat event. And what the report said was, may their memories endure in our actions to prevent similar deaths in the future. And that is absolutely right. We need to act now. A lot of our work, like a lot of LIEN's work around climate change and vulnerable communities, started several years ago, back in 2021, when LIEN and CELA and ACTO, as well as ACE, which is the Advocacy Center for the Elderly. So us four raised the alarm about the growing impact of heat-related deaths in Ontario, as the incidence of extreme heat days were increasing due to the intensifying climate crisis. At that time, we jointly called upon the coroner's office to improve tracking of heat-related deaths in the province. So what we were saying is that Ontario's current approach to tracking heat-related deaths is inadequate. While the coroner's office investigates deaths where heat is the direct cause, it doesn't investigate deaths where heat is a significant contributing factor or where it exacerbates pre-existing conditions. So that means that we are not tracking heat deaths in this province adequately. And that makes it really difficult to accurately assess the impact that extreme heat is having on the population. Also makes it really difficult for organizations like us to advocate for effective policies when we don't have accurate data. We also have public cooling centers, and what we're saying is they're not adequate for those with mobility challenges, disabilities, or respiratory problems. There still is a need for them. Public cooling centers are essential for those who are unhoused and for outdoor workers. Many studies have shown that common area cooling rooms in apartment buildings haven't really been that effective. There are many reasons around that, which we can get into in the Q&A later. Um, but for those with mobility and respiratory issues, movement is further impaired by extreme heat. So going to any kind of cooling center, whether in your own building or a public cooling center, could prove to be extremely difficult, if not impossible. What we're saying is that the most vulnerable populations during extreme heat event need resources within their own homes to survive. So LIEN, CELA, and ACTO jointly came to the conclusion, given the above facts, that air conditioning is not a luxury, as some people would have you believe. It's a necessity. So we developed a model temperature bylaw, and we began advocating for a max temperature bylaw in Toronto and Hamilton, working with community legal clinics, ACORN, and other local groups. So why 26 degrees? Um, our model temperature bylaw said that temperatures should not be higher than 26 degrees indoors. So reports from several jurisdictions have found that indoor temperatures above 26 degrees increase the number of emergency calls due to cardiovascular and respiratory distress. They also said that in elderly people, significant balance issues were observed when they were exposed to a temperature of 27 degrees. So therefore, it's crucial that indoor temperatures remain at 26 or under. And so at this point, we developed language around this model temperature bylaw, and we started sharing it with advocates and municipalities alike. Next slide, please. So landlords are currently not obligated to cool buildings. They are, however, obligated, of course, to provide a minimum level of heat. So, for example, the Residential Tenancies Act defines heat as a vital service that the landlord is obligated to apply, but air conditioning or cooling is not similarly defined. Um, in 2022, even the Ontario Human Rights Commission called on the Ford government to make air conditioning a vital service. That plea, unfortunately, fell on deaf ears. Next slide, please. So, right now, I want to talk a little bit about our municipal advocacy work around extreme heat. Um, so first, I want to give you an overview of our municipal advocacy work at the City of Toronto around a maximum temperature bylaw. So in Toronto, we formed something called the Toronto Heat Safety Coalition, which was a very loose coalition that we formed about 2 years ago. And it consists of tenant advocacy groups, health experts, and environmental organizations. Um, and what we started doing is having meetings with various city councilors and city staff, and we also delegated at committees. In June 2023, I think it was, the Toronto City Council voted in favor of exploring the feasibility of a maximum temperature standard. And that was sort of as a result of a successful motion brought forward by one of the city councilors. At that time, City Council directed city staff to study maximum temperature requirements. So that was really helping our cause. And they also asked them, along with, they wanted them to also examine other measures to mitigate extreme heat impacts in apartment buildings and come up with a report after. So we were emboldened by this. And in June 2024, the Toronto Heat Safety Coalition had a press conference at City Hall. And amongst our demands were that they needed to establish an adequate temperature bylaw. They needed to provide free heat pumps or air conditioners to eligible low-income tenants and seniors in Toronto. They needed to ensure that there was financial support for tenants who would experience increased utility bills as a result. We also said that there needed to be some sort of funding assistance or incentives for landlords, um, so that they were able to make those capital expenditures to upgrade their buildings and to provide an active cooling infrastructure. We also demanded that um, Toronto Public Health needed to be directed to properly track heat-related deaths as well as emergency room visits. Um, and there were many other demands we had, including things like free TTC rides on extreme heat days, having backup generators in apartment buildings. Aside from that, aside from this press conference, we also continued our meetings with various city councilors to get them on our side. Everyone seemed pretty on board, but we also met mainly with the progressive city councilors at this point. Um, so what happened after all of this is that in May 2024, um, a staff report came out recommending a framework to address excessive indoor temperatures in leased residential premises, specifically proposing a maximum indoor temperature of 26 degrees. Um, and in December 2024, Toronto City Council passed the staff report that endorsed this. Um, and what Toronto City Council did then is ask city staff to come back with an implementation framework by the fourth quarter of this year, which would include draft bylaw language. And so we are expecting this report to come out probably by the first week of December. Meanwhile, city staff contacted LIEN and CELA about a pilot program that they were envisioning for the summer that we just had, the summer of 2025. What they said is they wanted to establish something called the Air Conditioner Assistance Program. They had budgeted about $200,000 for the installation of up to 500 free portable air conditioning units in homes of low-income seniors. Um, so we were all at the table with city staff during these discussions. We advocated for things like, a simplified application process that removed as many barriers as possible. Um, for example, city staff wanted it to be an online application that required things like a doctor's note, and then the successful applicant would have to purchase the AC unit from a store and then transport it home and then self-install it. And what we wanted is to make sure that logistical barriers would not prevent vulnerable seniors from accessing the program. Thankfully, city staff listened to what we all had to say. Applications were done by phone, online, and in person. At least 1,400 seniors applied to the program, and the limited number of programs were distributed through a lottery process. Um, the remainder of the applicants were referred to things like the Toronto Hardship Fund, which helps people on social assistance access air conditioning units. But clearly, there is a huge need out there. um, let's go to slide 9, please. In Hamilton, our advocacy work in Hamilton actually began before we even started in Toronto. We had decided to start with Hamilton initially because Andrea Horvath had just been elected mayor, and we were hoping that a progressive city council would work in our favor. So we approached Hamilton Community Legal Clinic since we're all in the legal clinic system, and they were really keen to work with us on this issue. And then we realized that Acorn Hamilton was already doing similar advocacy work over there. So we all decided to team up, and an informal coalition was born made up of Hamilton Acorn, LIEN, CELA, Hamilton Community Legal Clinic, as well as Environment Hamilton. And over the next few months, we met with every single Hamilton City Councillor on Zoom to get them on board. With our maximum heat bylaw, we delegated at committees. Um, and then in May 2023, Hamilton City Council unanimously directed city staff to develop an adequate temperature bylaw, aiming for a 26 degrees Celsius maximum. We thought at the time that Hamilton would be the trailblazer, that they were going to be hailed as a potential national first. It's now 2025. The bylaw remains in limbo, with city staff reviewing options and consulting with other municipal partners, with really no clear timeline for implementation. Meanwhile, even though we started much later in Toronto, we think that Toronto is going to overtake Hamilton. And hopefully, Toronto will be the trailblazer, and maybe other municipalities will fall in line. Um, let's go to slide 10, please. um, I want to talk a little bit of the provincial advocacy that we have done. There are many reasons that we didn't start with provincial advocacy instead of municipal, even though it may have been a bit easier. And that's because we didn't think we would have a lot of success with the provincial government. Um, but we started working with SCAN, which is Seniors for Climate Action Now, about 2 or 3 years ago, on extreme heat issues at the provincial level. And about 10 groups joined this informal network across the province. On August 18th, we held a press conference at Queen's Park to call on the provincial government to take action. We have a whole list of demands that is up on the LIEN website, but it includes things like the maximum temperature bylaw. It includes tracking and publicly reporting heat-related deaths and hospital visits. But something to keep in mind with our provincial advocacy is it wasn't just focused on tenants. It was actually looking at everything. We're looking at measuring heat in schools, uh, childcare centers, um, looking at farm worker housing. So it really, really encompassed many different perspectives, which I thought made this campaign pretty strong. But again, it fell on deaf ears, and we didn't get any traction at the political level, at the provincial level. However, we had some great media uptake from across the province. Uh, Next slide. So I'd like to share this toolkit that LIEN and CELA developed. It is a toolkit on municipal advocacy around extreme heat and rental housing. It includes an introduction to the problem. It includes our model maximum heat bylaw, as well as a template for deputation on extreme heat and rental housing. You can access this on our respective websites. Or by scanning the QR code on this slide. And so we encourage all of you to use it and help amplify efforts across the province until every municipality develops a maximum temperature bylaw. I'd like to leave you with some final top thoughts. We need bylaws and legislative reform to set maximum temperatures of 26 degrees in all rental units to prevent more preventable deaths. It's pretty common for all levels of government to say, not me, or, to point to other levels of government as the problem and as the ones with the responsibility to act in dealing with heat in rental buildings. Um, but each level of government has the power and has the responsibility to act. And there's really no excuse to do nothing and to lay blame with others. Um, Municipal governments have powers under the Municipal Act and through Property Standards Act. um, to set temperature standards. Provincial government has the power to act through the RTA. Federal government, they can fund widespread climate adaptation for tenants across the country. Um, I mean, all levels of government must update their laws and policies to reflect our warming world. Band-aid solutions and helpful stay cool tips from government are not the answer. The obvious change required is in the buildings where we live and work. Cooling systems should not be optional, just as indoor heat is a must. Indoor cooling should not be considered a choice either. Having heating in the winter and air conditioning in the summer at home is critical to healthy living. So I hope you can see that, we are gaining momentum, but keep in mind we still have a really long way to go. And I want to thank you for the opportunity to share our work with you all today. And I'll be happy to take any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Zee. I see little clapping emoji appearing on the screen, so this means you must have done a good job, and I certainly think that you did. Thank you so much for coming and sharing some of what LIEN has been working on. For folks who might want to rewatch Zee's presentation or recommend it to a friend, we're going to post it soon on the YouTube channel that we have when Juliet cleans it up a little bit. And it'll be on there at our YouTube channel for Climate Justice Durham. And we also have one more event coming up. We've got on November 15th, we're going to be at the Durham Region Climate Roundtable Fall Forum. It's going to be at the Durham Regional Headquarters from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m., 605 Roslyn Road East. The theme this year is climate communications, communicating about climate adaptation, the climate change, to people who maybe aren't engaged and how we can connect this issue to other issues. So there will be lots of folks there to talk to, including us, and we would love to chat more with any and all of you about any and all things. We are very chatty individuals. I say we, I'm not as much, but other people are. Um, so we also are going to thank all of you for coming to this learning circle. And we have a little poll here that I'm going to launch now just to kind of give a little bit of feedback and tell us if you liked this topic and what kinds of things you like, where you are, where you heard about the event, so we can try to make sure as many people are hearing about it as possible. And if you found it useful or not, so we know to do more sessions like this. And I will not end the call without stopping and taking the results from the poll this time, because last time I did that, oops. So thank you so much to everybody for joining us this evening. Thank you again so much to Zee, and I agree that you are a trooper having to deal with so many political hurdles at all of these times, and helping people in tough situations and always trying to fight for better. So it's very good that you took the time to, it was so good to have you come and take the time to join us.